The morning sun had barely risen over Ridgewood High when the new girl, Alina Ward, stepped through the rusted side gate, clutching her backpack straps with the kind of nervous grip only someone who had lived through too many moves could carry. Her shoes scraped the concrete softly, as if even the ground was judging her arrival. The parking lot was half empty, but the eyes that watched her were not clusters of students leaned against walls, slamming locker doors, whispering as if they owned the oxygen around them, and among them lurked Ridgewood's most notorious pack of bullies, led by Clay Rivers, a tall, shark-jawed senior whose smirk alone could turn a good day bad. Alina kept her head down, hoping, praying, that today she would go unnoticed, but the universe had a cruel sense of humor. Clay spotted her instantly. His grin widened. His crew, Mara with her dyed red hair and permanent scowl, Jackson with fists like small bricks, and Cole, whose silence made him the most dangerous, closed in on her path like wolves catching the scent of something trembling. But what none of them knew, not yet, was that someone else had seen everything the moment they began moving. A man sitting quietly in his truck across the street, sipping black coffee, his dog's ears perked in the passenger seat. Former Navy SEAL Logan Hale, medically retired after a classified operation gone wrong, had returned to his hometown for peace, routine, and a place to heal, though peace was hard for a man trained to see threats in shadows. His canine, Shadow, a massive black Belgian Malinois, never missed anything either. Shadow's ears twitched the moment Clay stepped in front of Alina, blocking her path. Logan's hand froze around his coffee cup. His gaze sharpened. He recognized the stance instantly: intimidation, cornering, predatory behavior. SEAL instincts activated like they never left. Alina tried to step around Clay, offering a small, polite smile meant to diffuse tension, but Clay shoved his arm out, stopping her with a finger to her chest, small gesture, monstrous meaning. "Hey, new girl," he said, voice dripping poison. "Heard you think you're too good to talk to people." She blinked, confused. She'd said nothing to anyone. I just got here," she whispered. Mara snorted loudly, circling behind Alina as if closing the cage. "Oh, she's one of those shy perfect types. Thinks we'll roll out a red carpet." Jackson cracked his knuckles. "Maybe we should welcome her Ridgewood style." The air tightened. Students nearby paused but didn't intervene. Nobody messed with Clay's crew. And that's when Cole stepped forward, grabbing Alina's backpack and yanking her backward so hard she stumbled, nearly falling to the asphalt. Logan saw her knees buckle. Shadow growled low, sensing his handler's tension rising like a storm. Logan muttered, "Not today," and set his coffee aside, eyes locked on the unfolding danger. But Alina, scared yet refusing to show it, pulled herself upright and glared at Cole with a surprising spark of defiance. She had been bullied before in other towns, in other schools, but something inside her was done being prey. "Let go," she said, voice trembling but firm. Clay laughed, stepping closer, his shadow swallowing hers. "Or what? You gonna cry?" Then Mara shoved her from behind, and Alina staggered again. The group tightened around her, forming a hostile circle. One more shove. One more smirk. One more second and they would begin the beating they had clearly planned. But the moment Clay lifted his hand to swing, Shadow barked, a deep, violent thunder that stopped every head in the parking lot. Clay's arm froze midair. Students jerked around. Even Alina turned, startled. Logan was already crossing the street with the calm, lethal precision of a man who had walked into enemy territory more times than he could count. Shadow stalked beside him, muscles tight, eyes locked on Clay as if calculating distance, threat level, strike patterns. Logan didn't shout. Didn't run. Didn't show anger. He simply moved with that terrifying silence only special operations soldiers carried, the silence that said danger had arrived wearing human skin. Clay tried to play it cool, lowering his arm slowly. Sir, this is none of your—" Logan cut him off with a stare so cold Clay felt it behind his ribs. "Step back," Logan said, his voice calm, steady, the kind of voice that didn't need to rise to be obeyed. "Now." Shadow's growl deepened, and Mara actually flinched. Logan stood between Alina and the bullies, forming a living shield that radiated unbreakable authority. Students whispered, "Is that the Navy SEAL guy? He's dangerous." "Dude, his dog was in special forces." Clay tried to regain control. "She bumped into me," he lied. "We were just talking." Logan lowered his head slightly, eyes never leaving them. "I saw everything." Clay swallowed. Hard. Something about Logan, maybe the scars tracing his knuckles, maybe the way Shadow remained perfectly still yet ready, warned him not to push this. "Leave," Logan said. "Before you do something you can't undo." One look at Shadow's bared teeth was enough. Clay stepped back. Mara followed quickly, then Jackson, then Cole. But as they backed away, Clay pointed at Alina. "This isn't over," he snapped. Logan didn't move, but his presence alone shut Clay up. When they were gone, Alina finally exhaled, shoulders shaking. "Thank you," she whispered. Logan nodded once. You okay? She nodded, though her voice barely worked. Shadow sniffed her hand gently, sensing fear and offering comfort. Logan's eyes softened slightly. I'm here every morning, he said. If anyone bothers you again, you tell me. Alina blinked in surprise. Why would you help me? Logan looked at Clay's retreating shape, then back at her. Because I've seen people like them before. And I promised myself I'd never stand by and watch someone get hurt again. Alina didn't know what he meant, but the weight in his eyes said it came from a darker past than she could imagine. But Clay, watching from a distance with rage boiling in his chest, clenched his fists. He embarrassed me, he growled. We're not letting that stand. And just like that, a dangerous game began, one that would push Logan's instincts back into the battlefield he thought he had escaped. Because these bullies had no idea who they were dealing with. And they had no idea what Shadow would do to protect the one girl who had already earned the loyalty of a warrior. The day after the confrontation in the parking lot, Ridgewood High buzzed like a hornet's nest shaken by an angry hand, with whispers sliding through hallways and cafeteria corners about the Navy SEAL who stepped in, the massive black K-9 whose growl froze even Clay Rivers, and the new girl who had somehow become the center of a storm she never asked for. Alina felt the weight of every stare, every hushed voice, every shadowy glance, but this time something was different. She didn't walk alone. Logan Hale's truck sat parked across the street again, the engine off, the dog alert, as if the man had transformed overnight into her guardian. Though he made no promises and didn't need to, his presence alone drew a clear line through the entire school population. Touch her, and you deal with me. But inside the school, Clay seethed with humiliation, pacing the locker hallway with storm-dark eyes, replaying the moment Logan shut him down like a misbehaving child. Rage burned through him, twisting his pride until he could barely think straight. He made us look weak, Clay spat, slamming his fist into a locker hard enough to dent it. Mara flicked her hair back. Clay, he's a Navy SEAL. You can't just take on someone like that. Cole, stoic and silent, leaned against the wall with arms crossed. He had a military dog, too, Jackson muttered, his voice lower than usual. That thing looked ready to eat us. Clay turned sharply. I don't care if he's the president of the universe, nobody humiliates me in front of the entire school. Mara sighed, annoyed but intrigued by Clay's obsession. So what's your plan? Fight him? Clay smirked, cruel and confident. No. I'm going after the girl. And with that, he set something in motion he couldn't control. Meanwhile, Alina sat in her second period class trying to steady her nerves, but the events of yesterday kept replaying in her mind, the circle closing around her, Clay's raised hand, Shadow's thunderous bark, and Logan walking toward her with that impossible calm that made danger back away. She didn't understand why he helped, but she was grateful beyond words. Still, part of her feared drawing more trouble to him. People like Clay didn't stop until they felt they'd taken back their pride. At lunchtime, Alina hesitated before stepping outside. But as soon as she pushed through the doors, she saw Logan leaning casually against his truck, arms crossed, sunglasses on, Shadow sitting like a statue beside him. Students gawked. Nobody approached her. Logan nodded once when their eyes met. It wasn't a greeting, it was a silent message, I see you. You're safe. But Alina's relief was short-lived because Clay was already watching from the opposite end of the courtyard, his jaw locked tight, Mara whispering something into his ear that made him smile, a slow, wicked smile. Logan sensed tension instantly. Years of combat had wired his brain to read danger from a single twitch, a glance, even a shift in the wind. Shadow's ears angled forward. Logan lowered his sunglasses slightly, just enough to meet Clay's stare across the courtyard. For a moment neither moved. Students felt the air turn electric. Clay didn't look away, but Logan didn't need him to. He had already sized him up yesterday. But Logan also knew something else. Bullies never confront strength head-on. They strike sideways, from behind, where they believe their target is weakest. And right now, the weakness they saw was Alina. After school ended, Logan watched her walk toward the gate. Shadow trotted beside him, leashed but alert. You okay today? Logan asked. Alina nodded, though her hands shook slightly. I'm trying to be, she whispered. Logan gave a small nod. Courage isn't the absence of fear. It's walking anyway. She exhaled, a soft laugh escaping. Did someone teach you that? Logan's eyes clouded momentarily with memories, faces of teammates he lost, missions he survived but never left behind. Yeah, he said quietly. Shadow nudged Alina's hand comfortingly, and she smiled, but as she stepped off the school grounds, 3 figures shadowed her from behind, the same 3 who ambushed her before. Clay was nowhere in sight, which only made Logan more suspicious. Bullies didn't orchestrate rounds to themselves, they sent others to soften the target. Shadow's growl rumbled deep and sharp. Logan followed Alina immediately, pretending not to notice the 3 students creeping closer, but every part of him tracked them like prey entering a kill zone. Alina made a sharp turn down the side street where fewer students walked, unaware she was being herded intentionally. The three boys quickened their pace. Logan's jaw tightened. Shadow tugged forward, sensing danger spikes in Logan's heart rate. Logan whispered, "Easy, boy. Wait for it." Just as Alina passed the bike racks, the boys cornered her, one grabbed her arm, another blocked her exit, the third sneered inches from her face. "Clay says you need a reminder," the tallest spat. Alina froze. Her breath caught. Logan moved. He didn't run, he closed the distance with controlled speed, each step precise, shadowed by Shadow's silent but deadly stride. "Let her go," Logan said, voice low, steady, and far more dangerous than shouting ever could be. The three boys turned, startled. "Back off, man," one said weakly, trying to act tough but failing miserably under Logan's stare. "This is between her and Clay." Logan stepped forward once, and all three instinctively stepped back. "No. This is between me and anyone who thinks they can hurt her." Shadow growled, baring teeth if fear cracked their bravado. The boy gripping Alina released her. "Clay will kill us if we don't." "Clay won't touch her," Logan said, cutting him off, "and if he tries, he'll learn why men like me walk away from wars alive." The boys paled. They backed away slowly, then turned and sprinted off, tripping over each other in their panic. Alina breathed out, trembling you Logan steadied her. You shouldn't have to keep saving me," she whispered. Logan shook his head. "No one has to keep hurting you either." Shadow pressed against her leg, grounding her. Logan scanned the area, instincts screaming that Clay's next move would be bigger, darker, and he wouldn't stop until someone broke him across the street. Hidden behind an abandoned shed, Clay watched with hatred burning so hot it nearly blinded him. "Fine," he muttered. "If the seal wants a war, he's got one." And with that, Clay made the worst decision of his life, one that would drag Logan back into the mindset he fought so hard to escape. One that would awaken a side of Shadow even the school had never seen. One that would turn an ordinary bullying case into a full-blown battlefield for justice. Alina had no idea the storm that was coming. Logan did. He could feel it in the air, thick as smoke before a fire. And he was ready. Because you don't threaten someone a seal decides to protect. Not and walk away unscarred. The next morning arrived not with sunlight, but with a sense of unease blanketing the entire school like a fog only danger could create, and though students rushed through the gates laughing, shoving, chatting as usual, something felt wrong, too quiet, too watchful, as if Ridgewood High itself was holding its breath. Logan Hale felt it the moment he stepped out of his truck. Shadow felt it too, his fur rising in a sharp ridge down his spine as he scanned the parking lot with eyes that had memorized the scent of threat long before any human could sense it. Logan wasn't supposed to be here, he wasn't a staff member, he wasn't a parent, he had no official reason to patrol these grounds, but after yesterday's ambush, after seeing Clay's boys try to drag Alina into another trap, Logan's instincts left him no choice. Something inside him, something primal that had been trained, sharpened, weaponized in combat zones, whispered that the bullies were planning something bigger, something reckless, something that would cross a line no teenager should ever dream of crossing. And he wasn't wrong. Because while he watched students spill across the courtyard, Clay Rivers and his crew weren't anywhere in sight, not near the lockers, not near the cafeteria doors, not even lurking by the dumpsters where trouble usually brewed. They had vanished. And silence from people like Clay never meant surrender, it meant preparation. Alina sensed the tension too, stopping in front of Logan as she adjusted her backpack straps nervously. "Do you feel that?" she whispered. Logan scanned the rooftops, the alleys, the side gates, every blind spot, every angle that could become a trap. "Yeah," he murmured. "Stay close today." Shadow pressed his body protectively against her leg, guiding her toward the main building like she was his responsibility. Students watched the trio pass, some in awe, some in fear, some in envy that someone like Logan Hale had become an unseen guardian of the new girl everyone once thought was fragile. But Logan knew fragility wasn't what defined her. Yesterday, when three boys cornered her, she didn't cry out, she held her ground until he arrived. Most people break before help comes. She didn't. That mattered more than she realized. Inside the school, teachers sensed the tension. A fight rumor had been circulating since early morning. Someone overheard Clay saying, "Tonight changes everything." Someone else whispered that Clay's cousin outside of school got involved, and someone swore they saw Clay carrying something in a gym bag that wasn't sports equipment. Logan stood near the bulletin boards, pretending to read a poster while scanning every doorway. His military training didn't shut off just because he was out of the service, it controlled him, guided him, breathed through him in moments like this. And right now those instincts screamed, whatever Clay is planning, it's not happening on school property. It's happening somewhere else. At lunch, Logan stepped outside with Shadow at his heel. Alina stayed near him, not out of fear, but because some instinct told her she needed to. Students gathered around the benches in their usual groups, but there was an unusual emptiness in the air, the type of quiet that comes before a storm. Logan watched the parking lot closely. Only a few cars remained, but an old black sedan with tinted windows caught his eye. It hadn't been there the last 2 days. Shadow growled softly, ears pinned forward. Logan's jaw tightened. Either Clay had new backup, or Clay was inside that car. And then Logan noticed something chilling. The sedan's doors were cracked open just enough for someone to peek out. Someone watching him. Someone watching Alina. Logan turned his head just enough to disguise the movement and saw, through a sliver of glass, Clay's eyes staring directly at them, filled not with fear, not with anger, but with obsession. Something inside that stare told Logan this was no longer schoolyard bullying. This had evolved into vendetta. And vendettas get people hurt, Logan whispered, Alina. Go inside. Now. She stiffened, following his gaze. Is it him? Logan didn't answer. He couldn't risk Clay knowing he'd been spotted. Shadow, track, Logan commanded softly, and the canine instantly dropped into a low stalk, muscles coiled like springs, gaze locked on the sedan. But before Logan could approach the car, the engine roared to life and the sedan peeled out of the parking lot so fast students jumped out of its path. Logan knew chasing on foot was pointless. The car disappeared down the road, tires screeching. Alina's voice trembled. What does he want? Logan stared at the trail of dust left behind. Something he shouldn't be reaching for. After school, Logan insisted on walking Alina home, not as a request, but as a firm, necessary decision. They moved down the sidewalk, Shadow trotting ahead, scanning every corner. The sky darkened earlier than usual, heavy clouds gathering overhead as if mirroring Clay's growing intent. Alina finally spoke, voice soft. Do you think Clay hates me because I stood up to him? Logan shook his head. Clay doesn't hate you. Clay hates what I took from him. Alina swallowed. What did you take? Power, Logan answered. Bullies only survive when people fear them. I showed him fear doesn't work on everyone. She walked in silence, processing his words. But then, halfway down the street, Shadow stopped dead. Every muscle in his body locked. His nose lifted, sniffing rapidly. Logan's voice dropped. Get behind me. Alina obeyed instantly. From the alley ahead, 5 figures stepped out, Clay, Mara, Jackson, Cole, and a 6th person Alina didn't recognize, a tall, broad-shouldered man in his early 20s, wearing a leather jacket and a smirk that chilled her to the bone. Clay crossed his arms, satisfied. You embarrassed me twice, old man, he said, voice dripping venom. So I brought someone who can finally put you down. Logan's eyes narrowed. The newcomer stepped forward. Name's Trent, he said in a deep voice. Clay tells me you think you're some kind of hero. Logan positioned himself between Alina and the group. Clay, you need to walk away. Now. Clay laughed sharply. No. You need to. Shadow's growl vibrated through the pavement. Trent cracked his knuckles. Let's see if that mutt can protect you from me. Logan didn't blink. Shadow won't have to. And then the sky broke open with thunder, not from weather, but from the collision of fates that were about to unfold. Because Clay didn't just bring a bully. He brought a predator. And Logan Hale had no intention of losing. Not today. Not ever. The storm broke fully as Trent stepped forward, cracking his knuckles like a man who believed pain was a language he spoke fluently, but Logan Hale simply shifted his stance, feet firm, shoulders relaxed, his entire body radiating the controlled calm of a warrior who had stood in real war zones where losing meant more than a broken nose. Shadow stood beside him like a living shadow forged from muscle and loyalty, teeth slightly exposed, eyes locked on Clay and his crew with the silent promise that no harm would touch Alina while he still breathed. Alina's heart pounded, the fear real but overwhelmed by something stronger, trust, the kind she had never felt before, trust in a man who had no reason to protect her but did so anyway, again and again, without hesitation. Trent grinned sharply and lunged, trying to overwhelm Logan with brute strength, but Logan moved like the wind, silent, efficient, deadly, sidestepping with military precision, pivoting smoothly as Trent stumbled past him, and with one controlled strike to the man's shoulder, Logan dropped him to one knee. Shadow barked once, loud enough to make Mara flinch and Jackson take a full step back. Clay's anger contorted into something wild and reckless as he pointed at Alina, shouting, "Get her!" Now, but the order barely left his mouth before Shadow lunged forward with terrifying speed, not to attack, but to intercept, placing his massive body in front of Alina, snarling with a force that froze Clay's entire group mid-step, their courage dissolving like smoke in the wind. Cole muttered, "This isn't worth it, Clay, he's going to kill us," but Clay shoved him back, blinded by humiliation, by ego, by a desire to prove he still had control. Trent roared in frustration and charged Logan again, this time with all his weight behind it, but Logan used that momentum against him, twisting Trent's arm, forcing him to the ground, pinning him with the kind of controlled pressure that said I could break you, but I won't unless you make me. Clay screamed and swung wildly at Logan from behind, but Shadow redirected instantly, slamming his body into Clay's legs, sending him crashing to the ground, the canine's jaws stopping just an inch from Clay's throat, close enough for Clay to feel the heat of his breath and understand with soul-deep clarity that he had pushed far beyond the point of return. Mara and Jackson bolted, running so fast their panic echoed in the alley. Cole followed seconds later, muttering apologies as he fled, leaving only Clay and Trent on the ground, both defeated, both realizing they had tried to fight someone who didn't even need to fight back to win. Logan released Trent and stepped back, voice low but thunderous in authority as he said, "This ends now. You don't go near her again. You don't touch her. You don't follow her. You don't even speak her name." Clay trembled on the pavement, staring up at Logan and Shadow with eyes that finally understood consequences. "If I ever hear you hurt anyone again," Logan continued, stepping closer, "then you're not dealing with a teacher, or your parents, or the principal, you're dealing with me." Trent swallowed loudly, nodding, his earlier bravado evaporating into nothing. Clay, shaking, whispered, I'm done. I swear." Logan stepped back only when he believed them, then turned to Alina, his voice softening in an instant, like switching from warrior to guardian with a single breath. "You okay?" he asked. Alina nodded, tears filling her eyes, not from fear, but from relief, from gratitude, from the overwhelming realization that someone had finally stood up for her when she couldn't. "Thank you," she whispered, voice cracking. Logan shook his head gently. "You stood up for yourself first. I only made sure you didn't stand alone." Shadow nuzzled her hand, tongue brushing her fingers as if telling her she was safe now. The sirens in the distance signaled that someone had reported the commotion, but Clay and Trent didn't run. Defeat had drained the last drop of rebellion from them. Logan placed a firm but gentle hand on Alina's shoulder. "Come on," he said. "Let's go home." As they walked out of the alley, Shadow at their side, students gathered in stunned silence, watching the trio emerge like heroes from a battlefield none of them had been brave enough to step into. Rumors began instantly, stories of bravery, of the Navy SEAL who saved the new girl, of the K-9 that took down bullies without shedding a drop of blood. But for Alina, it wasn't the victory that mattered, it was the lesson, that kindness was strength, that courage could be quiet, and that sometimes, when the world feels too heavy, someone unexpectedly steps in to help carry the weight. Logan glanced down at her, noticing her quiet smile. "You did good today," he said. Alina shook her head. "No, we did." And Shadow barked once, as if agreeing. As they reached the corner where they would part ways, Alina turned to Logan one last time. "Will you be at school tomorrow?" Logan smiled for the first time, a real smile that softened the scars life had etched into him. "Yeah," he said. "Shadow likes the place." The Malinois barked cheerfully, making Alina laugh for the first time in days. And just like that, the worst chapter of her life became the beginning of something strong, something hopeful. Because Bullies lost today. Encourage one. If you enjoyed this powerful story, make sure to like, subscribe, and turn on the bell. More gripping stories are coming your way.